in this classroom, in any classroom you've ever been in, the first thing that you probably think of about a classroom is what happens in the classroom every day, and that is instruction. Okay? So in a classroom, we have instruction taking place. We have instruction taking place in the classroom. What else, as far as a teacher or a class is concerned, is related to instruction? What else do we have? Maybe that's really vague. Sarah? Lecture? Lecture would be instruction. When I lecture, I'm instructing. Okay. So, Barrick? I'm sorry? Learning? Hopefully when I'm instructing, you're receiving instruction and you're learning. Okay? Sometime, a little ways down the road, I'm going to ask you to do something, and it will help me understand how well I've instructed. Sarah? Testing, right? Okay, so we have test. Now, test obviously isn't only a test. There's assessment would be a bigger word there. There's different ways, but measurement, some way of measuring the effectiveness or whatever we want to call it of the instruction, right? Okay. Now, what we've just talked about all class period doesn't actually happen in class, but hopefully it gets brought into class and hopefully it influences the instruction. And what is that? We've just talked about it for about 55 minutes. Class. Let's try that again. Class. Objectives. Yes. Objectives. So we have objectives. Right? So this is, I made this term up. I don't think you will see this in any other reading area, but maybe you will. I say I made it up. I don't know. I've seen a lot of stuff. Maybe I saw it somewhere. Either way. Ideally, we don't start with instruction. Ideally, we start with objectives. And ideally, we don't start with a test. But does that happen? It does happen. If a teacher says, you can keep your job if your kids do well on this test, what is a really, really strong temptation for that teacher to do? Find out what's on that test. I'm going to make sure those kids pass that test. I don't care what else they learn. I don't care if they learn nothing except for being able to pass that test. And if they don't all pass it, then they're tempted to cheat. Right? Their livelihood depends on it. Okay, and this actually, I don't want to be, this is what happens in public schools all the time. And it's part of, it puts public school teachers in a real hard spot. Some of them really would like to just teach and teach what they know and love. Okay? But somebody else in another state altogether has decided that these things are important and that if their students don't do well on this test, they're going to be written up. And if they don't do well enough years in a row, they're going to lose their job. Okay? So that's a kind of a current issue. And so just be aware of when, we want our teachers held to high standards. Well, sure. But I don't know, and maybe I'm being Mr. Liberal here, but I think I'm just being really understanding the situation. I don't really care if the students do good on this test or that test. if the teacher is doing a good job of teaching. Okay? Because, going back to our philosophy, teaching is not about learning certain things. It's actually about learning how to learn. If my students go out of my classroom and they love to learn and they have the tools to learn whatever it is that they don't know, they can say, well, I don't know that, and then they can figure out how to learn it, they're set for life. Anyway, okay, so hopefully we're not starting with the test. If we're starting with the test, then the instruction is limited to how to answer the questions on the test, and the objectives are really just making sure that they know how to answer the information to be able to know what's on the test. Hopefully we're not starting there. But sometimes in the real world, teachers end up with so much pressure on them or so much perceived pressure that that's where they start. But we really don't want to just start with, okay, these are the notes. This is what we need to teach. That's not ideal either. We want to say, here's my class. What am I trying to accomplish? Here's a list of them. Sort them out into in a reasonable progression and order. And so we have objectives. We start with objectives, and the objectives should guide. Okay, try this with your computer. Objectives should guide the instruction. I guess if you're using OneNote, you might be able to pull up the draw palette there and put this in here. So then the objectives guide the instruction. The instruction determines the test. What I've taught on is what I should be testing over. Right? The instruction determines the test. Okay? The test then is an evaluation of both of these things in a certain sense. The test tells me if it's written well, if it's all done well, if it's done ideally, the test will tell me whether I met my objectives. And it will also tell me how well my instruction. I guess if the test tells me you met your objectives, then I know my instruction was good. But if the test tells me I didn't meet my objectives, it should hint toward areas of instruction that were lacking. Okay? So, this is what happens in a class, right? Basically. Now, in the last 2 minutes, I want to just say that I would rather picture this. This is in this vertical plane of thought. I'm going to move this. I want to put this in a horizontal plane of thought. Okay? Can you take this and picture it horizontally? Okay? Now, so that this in an advanced classroom is going to happen at 6 different levels. What will those levels be? Knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation. Okay? So, but all of this has to happen on that one level. I think, the more I teach this, the more I think I kind of condemn myself in this statement, but I'm going to continue to say it anyway. And it's going to be the second statement. If I teach, if you're in a class and all you're given is information, you're just given information. You got pages and pages of information. What is information? Knowledge, right? Okay. And then you get the test, and the test expects you to understand and explain something. Why does the test have a question like that on it? Probably because the teacher wanted you to understand and explain something. But since he wanted you to understand and explain something, that kind of question got put on the test, but it's bypassing the instruction. His instruction didn't teach you how to understand or explain anything. It just gave you a whole bunch of information and assumed that since you're in college or since you're in 9th grade, you should be able to take that information and understand it and understand how it's related to something else. Okay? right? So that's kind of unfair, isn't it? The instruction is all knowledge, and the test is all analysis, let's just say, or synthesis or something. Okay? Sometimes this happens. You have this objective, and you have this instruction that's just like high level, all hard work, higher order thinking, and then you're just feverish, studying like crazy, and you get a test that asks you to identify certain things. And this is where I think I am. Maybe I'm not. Okay. But sometimes, especially for this psychology test, it's not a psychological analysis. For this test over psychology, it's almost going to be completely that. We're talking through things. I know we're talking on a high level of, stuff, trying to apply it, but my goal, as I said the first day, is just that you know the vocabulary. So in a certain sense, we're doing, synapses are going like crazy, hopefully, while we're here. But when you get to the test, it's just going to be a matter of identifying the 3 of this and the 5 of that and the 6 of that with another word. It's going to be fairly simple. So if I warn you of that, then you know what to study for. But if I've worked like crazy and then I bring up this test, you've worked like crazy, you know all this other stuff, and all you're asked, that's kind of insulting. You've worked really hard, and all I need to know is name something. So when we teach, that's what I mean by we need to think of this on 6 planes, okay? And a test, and I know you got to go, a test could have questions from all of those planes. I'm not saying one test is only on this level. Depending on what you've taught and the level that you've taught the information, you're going to have questions on those different planes.